Okay, welcome everybody to today's Kimberley webinar. My name is Gabby and I'm part of the sales team here at Coral Expeditions based at our head office in Cairns. I also have a very special guest joining us today, Dr. Sandy Scott, and I will introduce him later on in the webinar. So we are recording the webinar today, everybody. If you do join in late or you've got friends joining in late, we will send a recorded version out to them and to everybody that has registered today. We will also have a question and answer section at the end of the webinar. So if you do have any questions, there is a Q&A section in Teams, so you can pop your questions in there throughout the webinar and we will answer them at the end. We've got a few more joining, so I might just pause for a minute and let them join in and then we'll get started. Okay, looks like we've got majority in, so we'll just kick on. So today's focus, it's taking you on a journey with Coral Expeditions to give you an insight of the Kimberley's vast and rugged coastline, which has been shaped by the powerful forces of nature. The Kimberley is steeped in ancient cultures and it's one of the most beautiful and remote wilderness areas in the world. For those of you that are actually new to Coral Expeditions, we have now been operating for 40 years. So we just celebrated our 40th anniversary last week. And we've always operated with a single purpose, which is to take small groups of like-minded explorers to remote places with expert guides, warm Australian hospitality, and most importantly, guidance. So to begin our Kimberley journey today, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at what you can expect on one of our Kimberley expeditions. Wow, it's pretty amazing. And that video really doesn't do it justice until you're there in real life. I have just returned from the Kimberley. I was fortunate enough to go over there and it's truly a spectacular part of the world and it is a must-see and part of your bucket list for sure. It's going to leave you with memories for a lifetime. That's definitely true. All right. So basically in the 90s, Coral Expeditions completed our first Kimberley voyage as the first ever expedition cruise operator to explore the region. So out of the 40 years Coral Expeditions have been operating, 30 of those years we have actually been exploring the Kimberley. So being one of the original pioneers and Australian flagged expedition companies, this has allowed us to curate the perfect expedition cruise the Kimberley has to offer. We have expert guides and crew that's going to share their expansive knowledge with you and their passion for the region. So from many years of experience, like Dr. Sandy Scott we've got joining us today, you're going to get that ultimate experience. In the Kimberley, knowledge and experience, it really is everything. Given the huge tidal flows that the Kimberley experiences, it's great to be there in good hands with someone that's got extreme knowledge of the area. So all of our vessels are Australian flagged, which means we spend more time in the Kimberley. We have the best local knowledge and we don't need to spend your valuable time travelling into international waters like many of the other foreign lines do. So our vessels are operated by Australian and New Zealand crew, and you'll get to experience that great warm Australian hospitality throughout your voyage. So whether it's enjoying an ice cold beer or a glass of wine on Veranda Beach, which you can see in this image, or it might be on a sand cay looking over Montgomery Reef, sand between your toes, or it could be on board our vessels, where we encourage a natural Australian style service and an open interaction between our guests and our crew. So it's one where you can watch your dinner being prepared with open galleys by our chefs, or you could go up into the bridge, have a chat with the captain, or you can just simply sit back and relax in the company of our experienced guest lecturers and other like-minded travellers. But it really is a true expedition style trip. So our 3 Australian flagged expedition ships, they are designed for the Kimberley region. They all feature beautiful wraparound decks. Some of the rooms have private balconies and there's lots of outdoor dining and beautiful alfresco areas where you can enjoy those famous Kimberley sunsets. They do have a shallow draft and high movability of our purpose-designed expedition ships, which basically lets you get closer to those coastal adventures and explore all those beautiful sheltered bays and hidden inlets, which are inaccessible to a lot of the larger ships. So this here is Coral Discoverer. Now, Coral Discoverer is our yacht-like vessel. It does have a maximum of 36 staterooms and a maximum of 72 passengers on board. So Coral Discoverer is now 15 years old. She did just undergo a refurb in December last year, but is loved by our loyal regulars because you can get that really nice intimate feel on board with the small numbers, as I said, maximum of 72 passengers. Now, outside of the Kimberley season, Coral Discoverer, she's domestic focused. So we'll visit other areas like Cape York and Arnhem Land and the Torres Straits, Great Barrier Reef, as well as Tasmania each year as well. Now, Coral Adventurer started operating in 2019. Has 60 staterooms and a maximum of 120 passengers on board. So there is a very familiar design across all 3 of our ships. As I mentioned, they are all purpose-built for expeditions. All of our rooms are outward facing as well, and they all have those beautiful balcony areas. So outside the Kimberley, Coral Adventurer, she is deployed to Papua New Guinea, Japan and the Philippines, and also parts of the west coast of Australia outside of the Kimberley. Now, this is Coral Geographer. So Coral Geographer is a sister ship to Coral Adventurer, which we were just looking at. So again, very similar design. However, Coral Geographer was delivered to us in March 2021, therefore our newest ship to the fleet. Also has 60 staterooms with a maximum of 120 passengers. So there is a vista bar on the top deck, and you will find beautiful bars on all 3 of our ships on the top deck, which is perfect to have that afternoon sundowner. And when not in the Kimberley, Coral Geographer, she does trips to the small islands of the Indian Ocean, other parts of Western Australia, South Australia, New Zealand, and even the sub-Antarctic as well. So all of our rooms are set up for twin use. However, we do have the option for solo travellers as well, and you can just contact our reservations team to inquire about solo travelling. Now, these here are our explorers, which are our signature trademarks. So we call them the Safari Jeeps of the Sea, and they again are purpose-built for our shore excursions. These are absolutely incredible. So super easy to get on and off. Basically, they're just loaded onto the back deck of our ships. You just walk out from the dining room, straight out across a ramp onto the explorers. You'll be lowered down, so they run on a hydraulic launching mechanism, and you'll be off on the shore excursion under 5 minutes. So when you do get to your shore excursion landing point, whether it's a wet or dry landing, there's just a ramp that comes off the front of the explorers. And again, it's very easy to get on and off of these. Now you can see in the image here, there is a covered roof. So that just protects you from the sun. All open air. However, there are clears as well. So if you do run into some inclement weather, they can come down and protect you from that. There's an audio system on board, so you're never going to miss out on what our expedition leaders and our guest lecturers have to say along the way. We do have a toilet on board as well, and they're very comfortable seats too. So they'll take you to where you need to go, and they do seat the ship's full capacity, so no one will be left behind. There's no taking turns. Everybody goes at once. So they seat 72 passengers. So on Coral Discoverer, we have 1, and then on our larger ships, we have 2, and they go together. Now, in the images here, you can see our zodiacs, which are really fun. We do use these a little bit in the Kimberley. So it's just providing another exciting and flexible option for our shore excursions and navigating narrow inlets and waterways that are not accessible with the explorers. So they get you up and close with nature. We do use these at the Lassipede Islands, and I've never seen so many turtles in my life. You get really up and close with nature, and you can see the other images at Horizontal Falls. So you will see a few of the little local sharks pop around and say hello. But again, just another exciting option for our shore excursions. So guest lecturers, Coral Expeditions basically was one of the first cruise operators to employ interpretive guides on all of our cruises. And it is a tradition that we continue today, which is fantastic. And we've got a really good relationship with a lot of our guest lecturers, and we're lucky that they have been travelling with us and working alongside us for many, many years, a lot of them. But each trip will include a mix of our full-time guest lecturers who join the expedition team and our special guest lecturers who are specifically chosen for their local knowledge depending on the regions that we're visiting. But they're basically immersing our guests and you on the unique wildlife and the environments that we're visiting, and that's what expedition cruising is all about. So having guided expeditions in the Kimberley region for over 3 decades now, we sure know the nooks and crannies that a lot of others don't. So our expedition team provide local expertise with a strong understanding of the unique landscapes, the flora and fauna and Indigenous cultures of the regions that we're visiting. And our passionate expedition leaders, they're on board, they take our guests on every excursion. So we're never handing over to land-based tour companies. We're with you along the way. And we focus on more time ashore with 2 shore excursions daily wherever possible. Now, the shore excursions on the Kimberley will vary. You will do a lot of cruising on our explorers up these beautiful inlets and riverways, and then looking for crocodiles and wildlife, which Sandy will cover in his part of the presentation. Or you might be going somewhere onto land where you're looking at beautiful Indigenous artwork, which we'll also talk about. There's not a whole lot of walking. Probably the most that you might have to walk is about 2 kilometres. However, we do recommend you bring some comfortable footwear and walking poles or anything, as it can be a little bit of an uneven surface and walking on rocky areas and things like that. So before we start to get into all the beautiful, amazing spots of the Kimberley and introduce you to Sandy, I'm just going to show you another little video, which you can get an idea of what to expect on one of our expedition cruises.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jamie, your expedition leader, giving you the final call. You'll need hat, sunscreen, water, as it will be warm. Optional footwear, folks. Thank you. I'm James Anderson, mostly called Jamie, and I've been in this role for around 17 years with the company. Back in 2002, I was teaching, and I was asked by a friend of mine if I was interested in doing a job. I was fed up with teaching, and so I said, I'll give it a go. He put me on the Kimberley run for the first time. People travelling the Kimberley will see a massive diversification of not only animals and plants, but also the rock systems. Geology is huge in the Kimberley due to its age. It is the most remote wilderness area left in Australia, really, and luckily it's still like that. It's not overrun yet. More and more vessels are coming in, but at the same time, when it comes down to it, there's still plenty of places you can go without seeing anybody. The remoteness makes it one of the most magnificent trips around. You can't get bored anywhere that we go. Everything's new. The weather changes, the light changes. You've also got the marine side of things. These are with the whales and dolphin. Also going up into river systems that nobody else goes into. It is the most unique reef in the world. It comes out of water, exposes itself twice a day, and it depends on the tidal level as to how much of the reef is exposed. So what we've seen on our cruise this particular trip has been just extraordinary. The Indigenous populations, there are three different groups that we go through. We go through the Wunnabal Gambera people, we go through the Warra country, and we go through the Bardi country. They departed basically in 1942, and so we're lucky to go through those particular different areas, and it's nice if we can see them along the way.
Anderson that has been working with Coral Expeditions for now over 20 years. He's one of our longest serving expedition team, and it goes to show his passion and enthusiasm for the area and how much of an amazing, incredible part of the world it is for him to keep going back for 20 plus years. And we're lucky to have Jamie as part of our team. So we have three different options that do the Kimberley voyages with us. So this one here is our main one. You can see on the screen, the Kimberley cruise, which is 10 nights between Darwin and Broome or vice versa. Departs April through to September, and all three of our vessels do visit the Kimberley season each year. So this one will cover the main icons of the Kimberley, which Sandy's about to educate us on. And as I said, we depart April through to September, so we've still got plenty of availability for the rest of the season this year. And I hear that the whales are pretty incredible at the moment. And with the rain that the Kimberley's still getting, the waterfalls are actually still pumping, which is pretty amazing for this time of year. Now, we also have another 10-night Kimberley voyage. However, this one is an art and culture themed itinerary. So it is a very similar itinerary to the 10-night Kimberley cruise. However, this itinerary is more focused on the arts and cultures of the Kimberley regions and the Tiwi Islands. So there will be opportunities to visit art centres where you can purchase traditional and contemporary art directly from the source, as well as our hand-selected guest lecturers who will share their knowledge on the cultures and the regions that you're visiting. So really this one is just an added bonus. You're getting the best of both worlds, which is pretty amazing. And then our third itinerary, basically it's another excellent one, and you're getting those added bonuses. It will just basically include snorkeling as an option as well. It is a bit longer, so this one's 12 nights. Also departs Darwin and Broome, and this one is in September. So it will visit all the same icons that you visit on the classic 10-night Kimberley itinerary, but you'll also get to visit the spectacular Rolly Shoals Marine Park and Ashmore Reef. So this is, as I said, to give you the opportunity to snorkel or dive, which is an optional extra, at some of the world's best marine parks, which we're pretty lucky to have in our backyard. So these reefs, they are home to at least 233 species of coral and 688 species of fish. So there's a bit of a fun fact for you. But many of these species are not found in other coral reefs. So we're pretty lucky to be able to visit those areas. So I'm going to hand over to the expert now. So we're so lucky today to have Dr. Sandy Scott joining us today, who's going to give his expert knowledge on all the main icons that we visit on the Kimberley voyages that we have. So Sandy has been travelling, visiting the Kimberley with us, working with us since 1998, which is pretty spectacular. He's a very strong expert in the Kimberley, that he's even published 2 books on the remote and exotic Kimberley coastline. So I'm going to hand over to Sandy, who's going to introduce himself and then cover all those amazing itineraries. Sandy, over to you.
Well, thank you, Gabby. That was a very comprehensive run through. I haven't seen that before, but you've done a great introduction. Now,
Thanks, Sandy.
I'm going to sort of look at 2 things. First of all, a little bit about who am I, so it gives you some idea of the character of some of the people you might get as guest lecturers. Well, I'm a retired lecturer from University of New England, is where I worked, and in my training experience, I've really work on sort of science education, whether it be in biology, plant ecology, earth science, agricultural science, all of those areas. Now, there isn't much agriculture in the Kimberley, but I have been doing a lot of research for all the other areas. And as already mentioned, I've been sailing here since 1998. And each year I've made myself available so that when they appoint guest lecturers, I'm prepared to do up to 4 trips between Darwin and Broome and return each year. I haven't done a lot of that in recent years, but earlier this year I was on the Kimberley cruise, rather a magical experience that was. And I've also had as a guest the opportunity to sail to Tasmania and to sail the Spice Islands. And Gabby has mentioned those, but they are really other great experiences. But as I said, I'm really an expert in the Kimberley. And I began, as I said, in 1998, and there were very few published resources on the Kimberley. So I had to do a lot of it by finding out for myself and then reading what I could. And when I getting so many questions from the guests, mainly about landforms, I was encouraged to do some more research, and that was the source of my first book, which is the Kimberley Coast, and talking about its bays, basins, islands and estuaries and how these were originated. And having built up first-hand knowledge over the years and more research, I've prepared a second book, and both of these have been published, this one by Axiom Press in Adelaide, and its title is Australia's Kimberley Coast. And it not only covers the landforms, but also aspects of the Aboriginal clans people, history of discovery, topics of plants and animals that we see on our shore excursions. And both of these books are sold on the ship. Now, one of the most important and most attractive features about coral expeditions is the use of the explorer. I think you've seen enough of that with what Gabby's been telling you, but here we have a shallow drafted vessel, comfortable seating, and it's even got a loo on board, which means away from the ship, it's very valuable. Now, the last thing I want to say to you is I've visited over 40 sites in the Kimberley in the Explorer, and given that our expedition leader is limited by time and tides, we can't visit 40 sites, but we can get about 15 in on each cruise. And just as a guarantee, the company makes sure that we visit all the prime sites. So horizontal waterfalls, King's Cascade, Perosis Creek, Careening Tree, Montgomery Reef, several art sites, rock art sites, and King George Falls. So lots of names. So let's begin with the presentation and I'll give you some points about these. Well, here is King George Falls at the end of the estuary. And as Gabby said, extra rain, they've been falling at the moment. And this would be an opportunity to transfer from the Explorer to one of the rubber duckies to go up and have a splash underneath that waterfall. So we'll keep moving through these slides. And here we are at a rock art site. And the main styles of art on the Kimberley will be seen at these sites, particularly the current day Wandjina figures, and then the old figures, which are the Guion figures, as you can see above that expedition leader's head. I think that might be Jamie that's speaking there.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes, yes. Okay. And by the way, all sites aren't easy to get to, so everyone can't experience all the sites, but everyone will experience at least two of the major sites and see the major styles. So people who aren't as able as others about getting around, that's how we cater for that style of, not style of person, that handicap of people may have. And moving on, now this is to Mitchell Falls, and we put in an optional helicopter flight, and the expedition leader organizes people in groups and they fly up there in the helicopters. And when you're up there, there's an opportunity, particularly during the wetter season, the end of the wet season, to have a swim. And there would be now plenty of water in the big pool. But the other interesting thing is you're able to walk around and actually see the magnificent Mitchell Falls from the land. You'll have already seen it from the helicopter. All right, so moving on.
And sorry to interrupt, Sandy. I just, while we're on this slide, let everybody know you don't need to pre-book that. You can book the helicopter flight once on board, and it is approximately $695 per person. But as Sandy mentioned, you can talk to the expedition team once you're on board.
Good. Now, we always visit this place. Now, Porosus Creek, it so happens that the crocodile, the Indo-Pacific crocodile, is called Crocodilus porosus. And I'm not going to go into the Latin, the Greek meaning of that name, but we often see crocodiles in this area. And you can see we can go up these channels, there's about a dozen of them, sail back through this very rich mangrove area, and we see crocodiles, whole host of birds, and of course, a wide variety of the mangroves, which we're looking across a huge mangrove community. So Porosus Creek is off Prince Frederick Harbour, and the river there is not the important bit. It's this creek that comes off it. Right. Now, this is King Cascade, and Philip Parker King was one of the very first people to make intimate exploration and hydrography. That's like a surveying of all of these sites. And he came up this long river called the Prince Regent River and found this fresh water pouring in. And one of their problems in those early sailing days, of course, was getting fresh water. And here was his source. Now, King didn't name the cascade after himself. It was named sometime later. So we can go in close here and have a look. It's a long river, but because the explorers can do reasonable speed, we can get up to the river, up to this point in less than an hour. So wonderful. And these falls fall right throughout the year. So if you went towards the end of the season, you would only see a smaller amount of water, but there's still water coming over them. And the next slide, we always make an attempt to visit the careening tree. And this is in Careening Bay. Again, another spot visited by Philip Parker King. And you might be able to read there, MERMAID, mermaid. And that was His Majesty's ship coming up here in 1820. So this ship had its mark left here. The reason why they'd stopped in Careening Bay, they had to pull the ship up on shore, that's the careening part, and fix up some parts which were leaking on the ship. Unfortunately, it still leaked, and this is Philip Parker King, still had to sail from there all the way back to Sydney before he was able to replace his ship. So the careening tree, a big boab, as you can see, with this writing, graffiti, you might like to call it. Right, the next slide. This is looking at Montgomery Reef. This is the view that a camera on some craft, whether it's hovering high over these falls. When we go out to this area, you can't see any of this, but we sail up this big gulf in the middle of the, not in towards the center of the reef, and we see all this water. That's a lagoon on either side, and the water is pouring off those into this channel. And it is fascinating because as the tide drops, we start to see it being exposed. And we're usually in there for well over an hour, hour and a half, and we get down so low in the water that you can't see our mothership away in the distance. So we see lots of animals, lots of birds, and of course, lots of the coral in here. So Montgomery Reef, and that's just up the coast from the horizontal waterfalls. Now, these are a greatly misunderstood formation, but I'm not going to go into that now, but this is one of my interests. And this wonderful formation is in the southwest corner of the Kimberley, where instead of flat geology that we've been seeing so far, the rocks have all been tilted up on their edge, and we've got very high tides influencing this. So we get these horizontal waterfalls, and it's just like sailing into a rapid coming down. Anyway, there they are, guests being taken up in one of the rubber duckies. Notice they've got all their safety gear on, and right in the inside of once we sail through this gap, we have safety boat in there. You can't take photos while you're going through there because you're hanging on and probably get a fair screen as you go. But we've got a photographer in there that will take some shots for you. Right, so a wonderful piece of geology, and a most exciting part. You won't be thinking about the geology at all when you're sailing up there. Yes.
I've never experienced anything like it. It's truly spectacular.
Yes, there is a company there, but they just go zooming through in their big fast boat. Now, another interesting point, and I told you this part of the Kimberley, this southwest part has been folded. The rocks have been folded, and this is one of the most dramatic folds. This is at Nares Point, not named by King, but well after King. This was in the early 1900s that Nair would have been up here. And this folded rock is the end of the Yampi Peninsula. Next slide, Gabby. Now, depending on the tides, remember, if there's the wrong tides, we can't go in to this particular spot. So if we were sailing down to Broome and the tides, of course, the expedition leader will know what the tides are. We can't get out to that, but it's definitely on our program to try and get there. And all of these birds are brown-footed boobies, or just the brown booby rather, and probably about another 20 different species we see when we go in here. And Gabby mentioned seeing lots of turtles. When we go up into at the end of that little cruise that the explorers on, they go into a spot where all of these little juvenile green turtles are feeding. So it's really a fascinating trip if we get into the Lassipede Islands. Probably at least half the cruisers get into the Lassipedes. Right, Gabby, what have you got next? Now, of course, many of the people say, oh, we've seen no animals, we've seen no animals. Well, of course, the bird is an animal, and the crocodile is an animal, and the whale is an animal, but you won't see whales unless you're there at the right season. So from sort of July onwards for the next couple of months, we see the humpback whales. We may see dolphins, etc. Crocodiles, sometimes we don't see many crocodiles simply because they prefer to stay in the water. It's warmer to stay in the water than get out on the banks to try and thermoregulate and get some heat into them there. But in most cases, we get great experiences, and it's probably one of the most exciting things. And of course, much bird life. I've just told you about the Lassipede Islands, plenty of birds there, but not as pretty as this one. I think that might be a rainbow bee-eater, but I'll stand corrected on that. Not enough to help me out. Right.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, Sandy. That was a great insight on all the different icons that our guests can expect to visit on the 10-night Kimberley cruise, or any of our Kimberley cruises that visit those icons. But it is really just an amazing part of the world, and it's, you know, as I said before, it's hard. These photos don't even do it justice until you're there. It's just incredible. So we're coming to the end of the webinar now, everybody. If you haven't had a chance to ask any of your questions, just pop them into the chat section now, and I'll just put on a quick video to finish off, and then we'll head into the question section. Okay, perfect. So we'll try and get to everybody's questions now. If we don't have a chance to get to your question, don't worry, because you can reach out to our reservations team. You can see their information on the screen there. They're always happy to answer any of your questions. They are based in Cairns, so they're here Monday to Friday, or just send them an email as well, and they'll get back to you as soon as they can. But again, thanks, Sandy. We might start with you kicking off the questions. So you did tell us a bit about the whale season in the Kimberley. Can you tell us a bit about the other seasons that the Kimberley experiences, and what people can expect in those seasons?
Yes, one of the most common questions I get asked is, what's the best time of the year to go? Or do I start in Broome, or do I start in Darwin? Well, it doesn't matter where you start, you'll still see the same set of great features of the Kimberley. But usually the wet season ends in sort of March, and we start our cruise at the end of March, early April, and that's when the waterfalls are likely to be pumping. And as the season goes on, the waterfalls get less and less. But what takes over from them, as I said, later in the season, once we're up to July and later on, we see the whales. So it's a bit of a toss-up. Very early in the season, it's much greener. Later on, any of the deciduous trees and there's many of them, remembering there's lots of little patches of rainforest here, and they're deciduous in some of these rainforests. So time of the year, whales at the end of the year, hot waterfalls, sorry, spilling waterfalls at the beginning of the year.
Perfect. And we also always get the question, is it better to depart from Darwin or Broome? I personally think either option is fine. There's no difference. But what about you, Sandy? What's your opinion on this?
No, it doesn't matter whether I'm going one way or the other. I find we're going to similar sites. There's no particular logic in the sites we visit. In other words, you don't have to see one, then the other. So if you start from Broome, you see all the folded section first, and then the flatter section afterwards. Now, when I say flatter section, I don't mean it gets boring. Certainly not. All of the Kimberley is described as a rock coast. So you see rocks with all colours and shapes and sizes and ages. So it doesn't matter which time you're coming. And people say to me, have you ever seen any changes in the Kimberley? And the only changes I see are seasonal changes. So not very much. Remembering that these landforms that we're looking at are 20 million years old, and the rocks that make up those landforms are 1,800 million years old.
Pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Now, someone just asked a question in relation, to the zodiacs. How easy is it to get on and off? Now, I had a couple of people in their late 80s that were on my expedition, and they didn't miss out on a thing. They went on absolutely everything, even horizontal falls, which is in the zodiacs, and they were able to get in quite easily. But I thought a good way that the expedition team described it is if you can step up onto a chair, on and off a chair, then you should be able to get in and out of the zodiacs. Sandy, did you want to put any insight on that as well?
Yes. When, for example, at the horizontal waterfalls, we don't necessarily the waterfalls don't run at the same rate all the time. There's times when they're running faster and slower. And for those people that want to see the phenomenon but not get bashed around is the wrong word, not have to hang on so tightly, they would go at those times. And if you don't want to go and get splashed under the waterfall, we have special there'll be an expedition going out saying we're not going under the waterfalls, we're going close to them. And as far as getting onto the rubber duckies, when we're going to the horizontal waterfalls, it's a stepping onto the edge of the rubber ducky
Zodiacs,
and then into the bottom of the boat and then sit down. So it really isn't so very difficult. Good, Gabby.
Perfect. And someone's asking if there's mobile access on the ship. So we have actually just installed Starlink, and we were testing it out on board, and you can get very good connection. So you won't be able to get your normal 4G or 5G mobile reception, but you can get internet connection. So as long as they can contact you through some sort of way like Facebook or WhatsApp or something like that, then if it's connected to the internet, you should be able to get in touch with those people that are trying to get in contact with you. And I've got somebody asking here, recommend for mobility issues, so walker or wheelchair. Unfortunately, we are not wheelchair accessible. You do need to be able to get up and down the stairs in the event of an emergency. On our larger ships, our two newer ships, they do have a internal lift inside. However, they will be shut down in the event of an emergency. So yes, we do need you to be physically mobile, and and as I said, there's not a huge amount of walking on there. Sandy, you mentioned that to the artwork sites, there's a few different options you can pick for sort of the hard,
Yes.
medium, yeah, or easy. So yeah, did you want to put anything in that? And I know that I've spoken to you before about taking the walking sticks as well.
Yes, I would recommend anyone that's not so steady on their feet, and I'm getting that way myself. I would have my walking pole with me so that if when I go to an art site, if I need it, I've got it. So if you use them, and we get some regular hikers that won't go out without their walking poles. So don't feel you're being segregated against. Certainly not. It's bring them along.
No.
They're good,
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
good aid.
Yeah. Another thing to definitely pack is binoculars. I think if your eyes are anything like mine, definitely bring them along. And the amount of things that you wouldn't see without them, like all these little hidden spots the birds like to hide in. It's pretty incredible, isn't it, Sandy?
Yes. I mean, up the front, I always have a spare pair with me, and I just say
Yeah.
to people, if you haven't brought yours, they're here. But look, if you've got a pair of binoculars, even the little small ones,
Yeah.
they certainly help your vision and improve your seeing.
Yeah. And so someone's asked about towels. You don't need to bring a beach towel if there's anywhere where you will be getting wet. Like if you choose the option to go under the falls at King George Falls, we will provide towels for you on there. So it's one less thing to pack. In the rooms as well, you'll also find a very decent sized shampoo and conditioner, body balm, body wash as well. So that will also reduce your packing needs. And there's a hairdryer in the room. You will get as well a complimentary aluminium coral branded drink bottle, which you can take on the shore excursions with you. And there's water refill stations at the bar on board too. And then just check if we've had anything else. Or dress code? That's a good question. So no, we don't have a dress code. You can even wear bare feet in the dining room if you want to, but we do ask that as long as you've got a shirt on, that's fine. Something comfortable and casual. And yeah, I think that's all we've got.
I
But
would
as I
add
said,
one thing to the dress code.
yeah,
You get a name tag when you're. It'll be in your room when you get on board.
yeah,
We encourage people to wear them. Simply, you're only together for 10 days,
yeah.
and you can't remain anonymous, but it's really nice. I prefer to say, hey, Joe, rather than hey, you, if I'm drawing their attention to something. Yes.
That's it. Good point, Sandy. And there's a few people just asking, and I noticed a few joined in late, so that's totally fine. You will get a copy of the webinar, so don't feel like you've missed out on anything today. Anyone that has registered today will get a copy of the webinar, and you can share that link with any friends or family. So we still have plenty of availability left for the rest of the season if anyone's looking for a last minute trip. And as I said, the waterfalls in Wales are pretty incredible still at the moment. So now's the time to go. And just contact our reservations team. They can give you a quote or chat to you about availability for next year as well. So the email address is on the screen, explore@coralexpeditions.com, or you can call the 1-800 number. You can also jump on our website as well, Coral Expeditions, and we do have live availability on there and some more information if you're interested. But yeah, please reach out with any questions. And we really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day today to join us and learn all about Coral Expeditions and the beautiful, amazing part of the world, the Kimberley. And a big shout out to you, Sandy. Thank you so much. It's really a privilege to get you to join us today and let us know your insight on the Kimberley, a real pioneer that's been visiting, as I said, since 1998, which is pretty incredible. Lucky you.
Thank you, Gabby. I think it's a really nice way to present the Kimberley, and the opportunity for people to ask questions. If it's not now, you could always send something, as Gabby has said, into the web page
Reservations team, yeah.
reservations team,
Mm.
and they'll pass it on even to someone like me or an expedition leader to get an answer if they haven't got it.
Yeah,
Good.
that's
Thank you,
it.
Gabby.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.